the TUC is actually concerned about the negotiations currently happening. So tripartite is meeting. The expectation is that after the tripartite meeting, they'll come up with a new minimum wage and the percentage that you have to increase salaries by. And the expectation is that they're not going to do the below 10% again because they say they are targeting inflationary rates. Nothing below that is accepted. My only difficulty is that it suggests to me that they are not looking at the end year inflationary rate, or which period are they looking at from last year to this year. Maybe an expansive one will, but they can't just use the 19.4 that's currently March's own to determine how much it should be going up by. If they're able to get anything beyond 10%, it would be a miracle. Because government has already indicated that it will require sika no asa. In John Mohammed's words, the meat is down to the bone. You remember that expression? When we were being told to fasten the seatbelt now.
Even that said something.
Yeah, the meat is down to the bone. Yes, so, I mean, all of this conversation is coming up with one thing. Would government be able to give TUC? Do we have what it takes to give TUC what they want? Employers are saying that we can only agree to what we can pay and not beyond what we can pay. Are the workers making a legitimate demand? And we all know that a lot of things, in fact, prices are skyrocketing at a rate that sometimes shocks me nowadays. If you don't take it within a week, the same thing that you bought last week, the price may double. You'll be shocked. In fact, I've been using this bottled water talk from 14 CD to 17 CD. Just last week, they are telling me it's 20 CD, the medium one. So, but what happened with this a matter of weeks that this is supposed to be going up? So, price has skyrocketing. The cost of living is on the ascendancy. Can we demand fair wages?
Yeah.
Can we demand a living wage, not a minimum wage? Would they be able to make it? They are threatening industrial action. Already, they are saying that they will not take the talk of government. They know that there is money to do other things differently. And the position of government does not support a very frugal system running. But already, the government is cutting back. So will we get minimum wage or a living wage, Winston?
Well, that's always been the argument, whether we are paying minimum wage or a living wage. Now, over the period, I realized that from 2016, where salaries were around 14 billion, currently estimated to cost us 35 billion at the end of the year. You ask yourself that simple question: over the period, the salaries that we have paid, what has been the corresponding productivity? If we have paid this much, at least we should see something. So you see, it is not just saying, my salary cannot take me home. When you work in an entity and you work well and the entity makes profits, the entity would reward you. Now, if you are making losses, how do I reward you? You just can't get up and say that, I can't take care of my wife and children, so give me more money. Make sure that you are able to take care of your wife and children by making the business that you work in profitable. So in every entity that you work in, make sure it is productive. That is the only way we can get money to pay you. Now, if we don't get money, you are making losses. You say, give me money to go and take care of my wife and children. How is that possible?
So I agree with you 100%. I just want to add that. So your position as, a manager or a boss or whatever running the business must correspond with the times that we're in.
Exactly.
So if things are difficult, you shouldn't be seen to be spending so much.
In fact, if you have led us to be
a living large,
you yourself, you must be fired.
Ideally.
If you've led us into that, you must be fired immediately. You, the boss, because you have also shown that you have failed.
Yeah.
So we look for someone who can take us to profitability.
Yeah.
It's only in this country that people are failing and they are still at post.
And they're explaining their
So for me, I agree. Listen, you go to the table, strike a deal that the employer can pay, can afford to. We shouldn't pay something that after we've done the payments, we'll end up. We're struggling. But I guess, again, it comes back to what we've been saying from the beginning when we got into this difficulty, this economic difficulty. Do we see government behaving like we're in hard times?
Yeah, only when it comes to you, but not when it comes to them. So I want to go back to what the TUC is actually saying. Okay, this was on PM Express. Nayeli Adefio is the spokesperson for the TUC, and I want to quote her directly because she is saying that all public sector workers should be given neutrality allowance. Neutrality allowance, okay. She says just as other workers have risk allowances, it's necessary for all public sector workers to be compensated for the opportunity cost of the work they do at various stations. All right, so she says, and I quote, because the reference was made to of GBC, that for instance, radiation allowance, and then I have worked in GBC before, so I know about night and risk allowances. You have people working the whole night through and move into the studio at night to work when everybody is asleep. If you didn't give them night allowance, or they were working with machines, or they were working with transmitters, etc., that we know has high levels of radiation, if you didn't give them that, what would you give them? And so we need to look at the specifics, and then we can ascribe whatever compensation there is to it. I mean, we have had situations where workers, for instance, are taken for granted. And it gets to the point that you, as an ordinary worker, say to yourself, no more of this. You know, whatever name is put to it, whatever or however it is termed, there are substances to these things. And that is what we need to look at. If people have worked and they deserve for you to give them a risk or neutrality or however you want to call it, please, let's go to the substance of the issue and stop putting names to them. Okay, so let's go to the substance of the issue. We've heard from the Deputy Minister that this allowance is to compensate people for the fact that they can't be politicians, for the fact that they can't do partisan politics. That is the rationale. That is the, what's it called, the substance of the allowance. And she says that everyone in the public sector should be paid this allowance because you should be compensated for the opportunity cost of the work you do. So if you are a lawyer and as a result of that you can't be a doctor, you should be compensated for the opportunity cost of not being able to be a doctor. I don't understand this. Does everybody, in fact, look, I get night allowance, I get radiation allowance, I get risk allowance. Even height allowance can be argued. Okay, now because if you are doing something that is putting you at a risk that you deserve to not face, and you are forced to face it because of your job, I understand why there should be allowance for it. But is it your human right to be a politician? Is it something that you are entitled to? Everybody has the right to be a politician. So if I can't be a politician, I should be paid for the fact that I am unable to do it due to my job. What does that mean? And are they trying to tell us that everybody in the public service wants to be a politician? And that they are sacrificing that dream in order to be in the public service? So we must now spend... Did you know how big the government's wage bill is? Do you know how many people are on the payroll of government? And this lady wants us to pay them all neutrality allowance. And she says we should talk about the substance of it. Where is the substance in this? It creates the idea that these people, they have a mind of fleecing the government. Where do they think this money will come from? They are holding us all hostage because we can't just fire them. I don't know who even made things so. We can't just fire them. So now they are just making all kinds of demands, sitting at home on strike because they want us to pay them to be neutral. I'm so disappointed.